Well, today's episode takes us back to East Lancashire and the Rossendale Valley, the Golden Valley as they used to call it, and we're going to be in the area between Rossendale and Waterfoot. And we're in the village, if you can call Cloughfold a village, we're in the village of Cloughfold. And this is the line of the old railway that came to Rossendale in the 1840s. We're going to take a brief look at the old Victoria works there, Smith and Nephews, and a look up this incline, which is a fantastic piece of Rossendale history. This helped them operate the stone quarries. It dates from around about 1850, and the stone from the quarries up on the hills was lowered down this very steep incline to the sidings at Cloughfold. So we're going to have a look where that is. But our main point of interest of today's episode really is this area, the old Hareholme mill, and it's on this great big bend in the River Irwell. Now, where these new houses are, there used to be a mill pond there, and there used to be a mill pond also on this side. The old mill's gone, but it's been replaced by something quite equally as interesting. So that's the area we're going to look at. We're going to look at this forgotten tragedy from 1801. So let's get on the ground and have a good look round.
Well, today's story really is innovation and tragedy. We're going to have a look at a bit of innovation and some mills, well, a mill in particular in the Rossendale Valley that was the first for one great reason anyway, not the first mill obviously. And we're going to look at a little known tragedy that happened there. It was a tragedy as well. And just a quick walk up the old railway line really, nothing fancy, but behind me is the mighty Irwell River. Perhaps not very mighty here, but certainly as it gets down into Salford and Manchester it's mighty. But it is mighty in one respect, that it was water power and the tributaries in the Rossendale Valley to the Irwell that helped bring industry to this area. First of all, obviously we had a long history of the domestic industry with the handloom weavers and spinning at home, and then there came the water powered mills. Obviously before that, for centuries they'd had water powered corn mills, hadn't they, as well. And then we came with the Industrial Revolution because these hills were full of stone to build the mills and to build the houses, and there was coal to fire the steam when the water power got superseded. But there was also another product that we don't think very much of coal when it comes to cotton manufacturing of any sort. We'll have a look. That's the remnants of the old gasworks, one of the gasometers. The other one was across the road, that's now a housing estate. So obviously we're in the Rossendale Valley and I'm stood on the old railway. The railway came to Rossendale in the 1840s and it really made a difference. Not just to the cotton industry, but also to the stone industry as well, because these hills are full of valuable stone. Where I'm stood is near where the Cloughfold stone sidings were, and I'll show you in a minute where the stone came down and explain that a little bit to you. But when I was a kid, this area behind me, you wouldn't have been able to see the main road. It was all a great big massive fence, say, with the gasworks down there, and just over the road here, behind me, well in front of me, was where my mum worked at one time. And this to the side here was always Smith and Nephews when I was a kid. Victoria Works, and my mum used to work there in the canteen. But obviously its history goes back a long way. But behind us on the hill, you can just see the line of the old incline coming down the hill there, and right on top of the hill you've got those three pillars. That's known as Little Blackpool. That's where people used to go in the summer. But my great uncle Spencer Watson used to work in those quarries at the back of there after the First World War, and I've got a photograph of him actually up there. And at the top of there was a mainline railway that ran for miles across these tops, across to Crag Quarries and then to Ding Quarries, and all the stone that was produced up there came down this exceedingly steep incline to Cloughfold stone sidings here. Now you can only imagine what would have happened if one of the wagons had got away. Those quarries were actually run, well, majorly developed by the Brooks family. Thomas Brooks from Hareholme, who later became Lord Brooks, and he tried to become an MP. The Brookses, they became Brooks and Pickup, and then Brooks and Brooks Collieries, Townley Collieries. But they really worked the stone on the top of that hill. A lot of it came straight down that incline into the railway wagons and off to Liverpool. Quite a lot even went across to America. It really made those quarries, it made them world famous really. Well, to an extent world famous. A lot went across to the paved streets of Boston. The Eiffel Tower, maybe the foundation stones of the Eiffel Tower are Rossendale stone. And a lot came from the Fassick quarries and the Bramwood quarries. Curbstones, all these houses here are built out of local stone, the mills. I can't find words to say how important those quarries were, but they are, sadly, they get swamped a little bit with the history of the cotton and textiles. Talking of which, let's go and open our story now with the textiles to a mill that's no longer there. It disappeared in 1920, but it was the first for a few things, and it's just up the road here. Come on, let's have a look. I've tried to get as near as I can to the shot of the still photograph, and you get your bearings a little bit by the arches on the railway bridge, and also on the mill, the other Hareholme mill in the background. Now, Hareholme mill is very significant because it was perhaps the first large-scale mill of its size in the Rossendale Valley. Of course, there have been other mills before, fulling mills, corn mills, but this was when textiles really got a hold. And another thing that was at this mill as well, it was the first mill in the area that was lit by coal gas. Now we think sometimes don't realise how significant gas was for lighting. We think, oh yeah, coal gas, yeah, it was dirty, it had a dull glow to it, it made everything sooty. But you know what? I'm struggling to find a superlative to describe coal gas. A guy sent me his university thesis on the history of gas making, well, coal gas making anyway. And it was really interesting because made you look at it in a different way. Let's say it this way, like I said, I was looking for superlatives. It was the best thing before sliced bread and after the wheel. Because before that, things were lit by candles and rushlights. People went to bed early because, well, lighting was expensive, and the little oil lamps they had didn't provide a great deal of light. Or people went to the pub where there was light and a bit of fun and a bit of company as well, and warmth from a fire. But most of the big towns were dark. The cities and that, lots of areas were no-go areas. And then came this fantastic invention, street lighting, gas lighting, and all of a sudden life didn't just end when it went dark. And neither did manufacturing. Yeah, they could have used the old oil lamps, but now you had this really bright light, comparatively speaking, that meant you could work these factories 24 hours a day. Yeah, there was added dangers, like the place could set on fire. But the invention of the gas lighting really was a turning point, and Hareholme Mill was the first in the Rossendale Valley to be lit entirely by gas. So you can imagine it became a bit of a tourist spot, it became a magnet. People came to go up and stare in awe really of this new invention. Seeing this mill all lit up like the Blackpool illuminations at night. And that's something that we kind of lose sight of really, because we look at gas lighting as inefficient, don't we? And if you look at a lot of the old maps, you see many of the mills had their own gasometer. So the uses of coal weren't just to drive steam engines, they were also to light the gas. So if you were a mill owner, it really did pay dividends for you to run your own coal mine. Because coal, apart from labour, was the most expensive commodity that you were going to outlay for. Anyway, let's have a look at Hareholme Mill a little bit closer, its history, and a tragedy that occurred that's sadly been mostly forgotten in the Rossendale Valley. Now it was built in 1798 by Edmondsons of Mythenroyd, and it was built for the Dockeray family. Now the Dockeray family originated from Lancaster. They were Quakers, they were the Society of Friends. And originally, I think it was Thomas and William that leased this mill. They also leased the higher Hareholme estate as well. And William lived at Heightside, which Heightside House later became the home of the Bolton family, the coal owners. And with William living at Heightside, he also had the rights to the game. And there's he was mentioned a few times in the newspapers as being a person that was entitled to shoot game. I forget what they called. There was a specific name for the license for that. And there was also the land. 2 farms were advertised down here on the lower Hareholme estate around about 1801 thereabouts. And it says on the advert, I think one was Adam Barn and another one was Cloughfold farm. I'm going to left my notes somewhere else. Anyway, it said if you put these farms together, they'd be big enough to make a nice dairy farm, a milk farm, and that people would have a ready market, whoever got it, for the work people at Hareholme Mill, so they could get some milk on their way to work, if they could afford it. Now, if we look at the map, the first Ordnance Survey map that obviously was done in the 1840s, we can see on there, if you have a look, you can see 2 ponds associated with the mill. There's a mill pond right in front, then there's an aqueduct going under on a bridge over the road, and then a further mill pond across the road. I'll show you. So this is obviously the site of the other mill pond. Where did the tragedy happen? Was it here or was it over the road? We'll never know now, will we? But it's a good place for a blue plaque. Now Mike Rothwell mentions it in his book, where he does several books on industrial history around East Lancashire. And they're a fantastic resource really, where he gives you quite a good history of the mills and things. But anyway, I found this also in the local papers when I was looking for something else. In 1801, they had quite a very cold winter, and the mill ponds froze. So what happens when you get frozen water? Well, people go on them. Now I don't think that the work people in those days could afford skates somehow, but certainly had clog irons, and you could skate quite a way on those. Anyway, in the December, I think it could have been the 17th, on the Thursday evening, a group of people, including children, went skating on one of the ponds. It was either this one or the one over the road. Now they all ended up getting together in a group, as you do, probably having a laugh and a giggle, who's going to do what next. The ice broke, and there was at least 7 of them went through the ice into the freezing water, and it looks like most of them were children. Anyway, there was an old guy there, aged 70, and sadly I don't know his name, and he went to try and rescue them, but in trying to rescue them, he too went into the water and was drowned. And interestingly, the day before, in Middlewich, there was 9 children went into a mill pond there. Again, they were skating on it, well, you know, sliding about on it, and they went through the ice there. Now 8 of those got out, but 1 sadly drowned. So this wasn't an isolated incident. It must have been quite a cold, well, obviously it was very cold, wasn't it, you know? Now the Dockerays who owned the mill, well, obviously it must have really affected them as well. So they actually paid for the funerals, and they also gave, I wouldn't say they gave compensation because that would be wrong, but they gave presents of some sort to the parents of the bereaved children. So that's what happened here in December of 1801. A forgotten tragedy, but a forgotten tragedy. Maybe one that can be remembered from now on. But you might be saying, well hang on Clive, there's a mill there, isn't there? What do you mean it's gone? Well, the Dockeраys, William Dockeray died sadly in 1807 when he lived up at Heightside, and the York paper said that he died in the prime of life. So I've looked him up in the Lancaster paper, but sadly, you know how ink sort of bleeds and I can't read it proper, so he was either aged 33 or 53, but seeing that it was in the prime of life, I don't think they would class 53 in those days as the prime of life. So he was either 33 or 38 in that area, and he died in 1807. And his father, David, he died the following year. Now the Dockeray family, they were Yeah, they were big shareholders and a big part of the Halton Iron Company Limited that was on the banks of the River Lune there up in Lancaster. So their partnership up there was broke up in 1808 following the death of Father David Dockeray. So I can't tell you off the top of my head when they finished with this mill. But in 1908, 1909, this became, again we've had the first gas works, this became the Rossendale Electric Works. And a bit more industrial archaeology, maybe somebody can fill us in there. We've got obviously a weir, small weir in the river here, and a sluice. And can you see where they've bricked something up there? And something's gone through that wall, and then there's been a way into the mill there as well, hasn't there? So perhaps somebody knows what that is. Anyway, let's have a look at the front of the electric works. So it's just a short and tragic tale about a building that perhaps you've drove past many times, and a sad event that happened over the road over 200 years ago. Anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll have a look around for some other interesting events in the area.